Primal Movers experience is open for anyone interested in moving beyond set physical skills and categories or perceived limitations towards a deepening freedom of movement intelligence, connectivity and expression. The primal instinct is within us all, but we needn't know all the answers in advance. We simply connect deeply through our bodies in the experience and beauty of movement.
One more time. Welcome, Tom Mountjoy, Primal Mover.
Thank you.
I've been watching your stuff on mainly Instagram for maybe 2 years now. And I think I found your content or your profile like just by an accident by watching Ido Portal, the movement coach of Conor McGregor. And then I saw like, this guy's in Bergen. And I think I saw that actually Joe Rogan or somebody is following you on Instagram. And I said like, oh yeah, must be a guy he must be for real, this guy. And I saw your movement exercise. You do a lot of exercise outside in the woods, carrying stones, sticks and stones. You do like unorthodox movements, and we just did some in the exercise room, so I feel a little bit pumped.
Nice.
And
nice.
warm. So what's your background? How did you start with this?
Well, where to start? I guess I've always been interested in unorthodox movements and traditional sports. Growing up in New Zealand, I was heavily involved in competitive athletics and football, cycling, the usual things you do growing up. But there was always a part of me that just liked to muck around in the woods and climb trees and jump off rocks and into water pools and really just have fun. And I think I've been obsessed with understanding movement in its sort of in a holistic perspective all my life, really. And that's just carried on. As I've got older, I've been more interested in and trying to sort of understand my body a bit more and learn more about what are the sort of the fundamental, what's the fundamental nature of my movement. And then also a lot of my travels have taken me all around the world looking at different cultures and the way that they move their bodies, and just a general fascination about the body and about different ways that we can strengthen the body and access our body and use our bodies. And it's an ongoing research, actually, experimental research.
Yeah, because most people don't take it to that extreme as you have done it, but in the other way, now you can make a living out of it, and you can do it as.
Well, I'm still trying. I'm trying at least, but there is definitely I guess I'd call it a niche out there for people who are maybe a little bit tired of the mainstream kind of fitness and strength and condition industry, and people that are looking for something a bit more, maybe giving them a bit more connection and a bit more feeling of collaboration with nature and understanding about their bodies and the emotional sensations that the body can reveal, that sort of thing. And I think mainstream fitness, strength and conditioning, it doesn't really offer the complete package. It sort of offers ways to get strong to a certain extent. It offers the aesthetic part of it. It offers skills. It offers some sense of community, if you like, but it often leaves a lot of questions for a lot of people. And there are certainly people out there who are interested in asking those questions and exploring the possibilities, for sure.
Yeah, the more primal stuff.
Yeah, just the way that we can move without sort of having to categorize what we're doing or name what we're doing, what sport it is or what technique it is or what method it is or how we should look moving. Just moving and enjoying that, and actually seeing that in itself is something very primitive and very primal to our nature, and in a way learning just to have fun with that and feeling good about that in your body, and seeing that actually spreads to other parts of our well-being as well.
Did it develop over time, your interest for the whole package, or was it like, did you start with like the the body movements, and then it was more like you went into the more entire package of it?
No, it evolved over time, and I think there's probably been a few turning points in my life. One of them is an injury that I got, or a set of injuries from cycling, like lower back injuries especially, recurrent knee injuries from earlier football injuries that a lot of us have had and suffered from. So that was kind of in my 30s, early 30s, and just realizing that I couldn't continue that avenue, just thrashing my body and really pushing my body so hard that I'd done for 30 odd years.
Yeah.
And then in a way trying to look for alternative ways of using my body, of enjoying my movement, being outside, being fit, and of course the aesthetic part of it as well, looking good, feeling strong. So that was one turning point, is trying to look for different solutions and realizing that I couldn't just override my body with my ego, just continuing to, pump my body as hard as I was. And another big turning point was a period of time about 10 years ago where I lived in the Solomon Islands in the Western Pacific. I was doing research as part of my PhD research down there, and I was looking at youth athleticism and sporting practice down there, and just looking at the way that they move down there, no shoes, just out on the rocks and the sand, climbing trees. Just the way that they moved gave me a real sense of appreciation for that sort of innate nature of moving.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that with no shoes nowadays, because I have a small daughter now. She's 4 months old, and I've been thinking about the like we just cast in, like we put shoes on their little feet before they even it's necessary. Like we smother the feet. We leave no room for the toes to spread out and have the correct balance. And I see it, like, I'm lucky because I when I was raising up, or when I grown up, I did martial arts. I did a lot of barefoot movement and training. But I see with my friends and family and stuff, people who haven't done that, they have really narrow feet, always problems with their ankles. And now you see more and more those 5-finger shoes popping up. People using those. There's
a little bit more awareness, I think, these days, but you're right. I mean, if you think about it, the feet, they're the first contact point with the ground, really. So from a proprioceptive point of view, they give us so much information just by standing on the ground. So if we're cocooned and smothered, like you said, in these narrow foot coffins, as I think I've heard David Weck call them, then we're not getting that sensory feedback, that initial sensory feedback that really connects us with the earth and gives us that appreciation of having balance and feeling gravity. So if we're, it's just like from a young age, we're just overprotecting ourselves, and we're doing that through our children, and we're just trying to desensitize people really from the actual natural connection with nature. And you travel to any of these, parts of developing countries and these parts of the world, and shoes are not often worn like they are here, and you notice that in the size and the shape of their feet as well. Here in the West, I went the other day to try and find some shoes for work. I went to this local sports shop, and literally I couldn't fit into any of the shoes, any of these traditional sports shoes, because they were too narrow. So it's just something that's worth being aware of, and worth gradually introducing yourself back into barefoot training if you're an adult, and then certainly as a kid, just letting kids run around.
But it's most people will put the stamp on you like hippie. If you go around with like when I work here at FlowState, I would love to go around barefoot, but it doesn't look professional at all. So I need to keep my shoes on, because I see now this summer it was really hot some days. I just had the shoes off and maybe no socks. People look at your feet like, why do you don't have any shoes on? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, there's time and place, I guess, like living in the city, asphalt and office and things. But I guess if you're at home, or if you find a patch of grass, any occasion, then definitely get the shoes off and just let your feet breathe. For one thing, they're going to stink less.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it funny because I live in the seventh floor of a big building, and at night when I go out with the dog, I don't use the shoes sometimes, and it can be really shitty weather. And I go into the elevator with my dog, and I stand there, and suddenly it stops in a different floor, and somebody comes in, and it's like 11 o'clock at night, and it's raining outside, and like, no shoes? Like, this guy's a fucking freak.
Yeah.
But it's nice. You don't need shoes to just go out for a little walk.
No, you don't need. I mean, it's just like anything. If you're prepared just to be comfortable in your own skin, then I think that's, at the end of the day, that's kind of the goal. Should be the goal, at least for most people in life, is to feel comfortable in their own skin. And if other people are concerned about you going barefoot, being comfortable in your own skin, then it's really their issue, not yours. So I don't worry too much about that, and luckily also these days there's some really good options for shoes, barefoot shoes. I tend to use Vivo Barefoot. I found them really, really nice. They have a nice.
You had some what were similar.
Yeah, they're kind of a cross country pair, and they also have an indoor pair, the same brand, but they have a nice wide shoebox, footbox, so they're really comfortable if you've got kind of big wide feet like I have. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, wide feet. You have the biggest legs I've ever seen. Yeah, the calves.
Yeah, the calves.
Always have the genetics behind that, or?
Yeah, I mean, the genetics is definitely a big part to say in that. I mean, my father, he was a bit of a beast when it came to his legs and his forearms and his hands, and so I think I've definitely struck the gold card there with the genetics, but also a background in cycling, competitive cycling from a very young age, BMX, and then mountain biking, and then road riding. Just the continual push and pull of the pedals. That's definitely kept things going there strength wise. But definitely having strong ankles, strong feet, strong lower legs, I've found has enormous crossovers to athletic potential, power, strength, stability, balance, explosiveness. So I always recommend people to focus on the lower distal portions of the legs rather than just the thighs and hips, like a lot of guys seem to be doing.
Yeah, but it's funny. I had a theory before because I did a lot of martial arts, and I saw that many fighters have thin, small calves, and I was thinking maybe it's because they're jumping around all the time and they're overtraining their calves. So they're sending a signal. It's like, okay, at some point the body recognize overtraining, and okay, don't send like growth that way, like limit the growth because we're going to use this place a lot, so that will fuck up with mobility or something like that.
Could be.
Yeah, I don't know, because if you see professional boxers, many of them very skinny calves.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how massive your thighs are. If you've got massive thighs, then your calf's always going to look a bit skinnier. I've definitely heard from a lot of guys, in the strength and bodybuilding game, that the hypertrophy-wise, it's the calves are the kind of the last part of the body to get the gains. So if I had a couple of dollars for every time people ask me about my secrets, then I'd probably be a wealthy man now. Yeah. But I'm actually while we're on that topic, I'm considering coming out with a training program actually for the lower legs. So look for that soon, and we'll see how that goes. A lot of people have been asking. Yeah, so I might share a few secrets.
Yeah, capitalize on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I saw you did a couple of months ago. I saw you did a head movement thing outside in the woods where you like just move your head. And you had so good mobility, it sort of like looked like it was movie trick. So I had to stop the movie and rewind and like, is this for real? Because you're really flexible with your head and all the movements. Like what I see working here is most people are really stiff in their head, and especially the head is placed way in front of their body, and the shoulders are pointing forwards. And so when I watch your profile and I see what you do, it's like I think you're really on the ball of how the next generation should be paying attention to. Take it back to something primal, using the body in different ways and incorporating the exercises you just moved me. I really would like people to go in and take a look at your page, because it's really nice to see.
Yeah, no, I mean, thanks. I mean, the way I approach that mobility-wise is from more of that primal stance. I look at the way animals in nature move. I look at the way birds move, cats move, and often they are so acutely aware of each joint and the range of motion in each joint, so they're not kind of stiff in any ways. And if you think about a bird is not kind of moving its whole body around to see what's behind it. It's moving its head around, And the classic example is the owl, And you look at cats, and their ocular mobility of just their eyes, their eye movement, and the way that their necks can actually rotate to the maximum of their ability. So again, it's just the same theory. It's taking each joint through its full range of motion, developing awareness, and then gradually developing stability and strength over that range as well, and then training that, because we get good at whatever we train, and if we don't train it, then we lose it. So if we're turning around, someone's calling us from behind, and we're moving our entire shoulders, upper back to look around, then we're not moving our neck, So why expend that energy? Why not just learn to move your neck?
I remember when I was younger, people said you have to be careful about rolling your head backwards. I don't remember why, but it's probably because most adults don't have the muscles in top of the neck. So you hurt your neck. Because all the adults told us when we were children, like, be careful when you take your head back like this and roll your head. And I didn't know what they were meaning at all. So it was like,
well, you look at the way that wrestlers train, putting all their entire load on the back of their neck and doing those dynamic mobility movements with their neck. It's like the neck is extremely strong, but of course, like anything, you need to train yourself up to being able to actually load the neck in those positions as well. So yeah, being careful. I mean, for me, I always say, well, what does that mean? It's like you get to the layers about what do you mean be careful why, what is your rationale behind being careful? Use your body, learn to use your body to its maximum potential, and then then risk becomes a completely different question.
Yeah. Do you do any like gymnastic stuff, like walk your hands or backflips or something like that, just to play around?
You mean, you mean more kind of dynamic sort of acrobatic movements? Yeah. To be honest, no, not really. I did a little bit when I was younger, a little bit of gymnastics stuff when I was younger, but as I'm older, I'm trying to limit the damage on my body and just try and stick to the things that I enjoy and that I have a reasonable control over. So yeah, I've dabbled a little bit, and when I was doing the kind of the Ide Portal training, I was starting to learn a little bit of some of the gymnastic or capoeira based moves, but yeah, to be honest, I'm not really too fond of like rolling and that sense of kind of being upside down and being dizzy, and so I haven't really probed that realm too much. And yeah, I'll jump on a trampoline every now and then and do a few forward rolls and cartwheels, but yeah, apart from that, I'll do some static handstands, and yeah, that's about it. So I'm not really too fond and haven't really spent too much time dabbling in those kind of acrobat. I mean, they look cool, and I appreciate people that have that in their game, but it's just it's like there's a list of things that you want to do, and there's a list of things that are cool, but how much time do you want to spend towards it? And I think for those kind of movements, those kind of tricking or parkour or acrobatic kind of movements, it requires quite a lot of training and quite a lot of dedication and commitment. And and I've just got other things that interest me, to be honest.
Yeah, it's pretty high risk compared to the reward. It's like jumping around from one roof to another and and doing tricks.
And I mean, it could be for what your reasoning is behind doing that, and if that's your main thing and that's what you love doing, then cool, go for that. And I admire those guys for sure, and they're true athletes, But if you're doing it just to try and get certain tricks or get certain moves, and there's nothing really much beyond that, then I'm thinking maybe the risk reward factor is could be a little bit skewed in that regard. But each to their own. I'm just appreciative of people that get out there and do stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And some have higher risk factors in it. Other people, like if you want to just learn a static handstand, there's pretty low risk in that. So it's that's cool for some people too.
Yeah, it is. It's like a milestone. I see a lot of people are like have been asking me, oh, you walk around on your hands and you do handstands. Can you teach me? It's like, yeah, but first you have to have the basic strength to actually hold your arms straight.
Yeah.
Because most people just go down and collapse right away. So you need to teach them like up against the wall, and you see people practice forever, and when they finally do it, it gives them a big sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just talking about the handstand. I think as far as that goes, if someone was interested in pursuing that, it takes a long time if you want to learn a good kind of a static freestanding handstand, but the carryovers or the actual carryovers for body awareness, body strength, mobility are pretty high actually. So I think for as far as upper body training, if you commit to learning a good solid handstand, then you're gonna get a lot of other benefits from that as well. So but it takes a lot of time and commitment. A lot of people don't have that.
Yeah, for sure. And in the beginning, they will have pain in every joint and elbows and yeah. I saw you have last year. I think it was sometimes last year you had something called Emptiness Project.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were outside in the desert in the States.
In the Joshua Tree, in California.
And what's that?
Yeah, that's actually coming up next month. So I'll be heading over soon for the second edition of that. This is a project that me and my good friend, business partner, mentor, guide, coach, collaborator, DJ Murakami, who's otherwise known as Strong Camps. Him and I got together a couple of years ago and did some movement sessions together and did some experimentation with different tools of awareness, if you like, over in California. And we came up with the idea of actually getting a group of people together in the desert to explore movement and different ways that we can develop more movement awareness and sensitivity, a little bit outside the mainstream, using different tools, different methods, different techniques. And it was more of like an experimental gathering last year in the fall, and we got a group together and we had, I think it was 3 or 4 days, and we explored and we did a lot of more meditative sort of movements as well. We did a lot of breath work, we did a lot of sound meditation as well, and we experimented with microdosing as well, psilocybin. So we were kind of basically just exploring ways of using our body and our physicality in ways that it lie a little bit outside mainstream teaching, coaching, coursework, methodologies, techniques. And it's a continual experiment that we're doing. We have another side project called the Emptiness Lab, where we're actually testing a lot of different tools and techniques on ourselves, and we're having testing groups, beta testing groups as well, that we're working with some of our techniques and protocols. And
how do you do that testing group?
Basically, we just recruit people who are really into our stuff and who are willing to be guinea pigs and trialing a lot of our protocols and methods. And we gather them up and we work online in private groups, and we give them protocols and we give them little tasks, and we get feedback. We get video analysis, different kinds of feedback, and we have group discussions, group sessions, and we're basically just developing protocols, and we're looking at ways that we can really expand people's awareness of the possibilities of movement, like what movement could possibly reveal, and other aspects of their lives as well. Because it becomes more about not just connecting with your own body, but connecting with other people, connecting with close relationships, connecting with psychological issues, with emotions, with nature, and ways of using different tools that can actually help us tap into this deeper level of sensitivity and awareness. So it's kind of like an experimental lab that we're working with, and it's a lot of fun because it's what we do, what we love doing. And we've found just through the power of social media that a lot of other people are interested in this as well. So we have another emptiness project coming up next month, sold out, long sold out. And it's going to be a lot of fun, and we have guest teachers coming in this time, giving different seminars on different techniques, color puncture therapy and soft body work. Color puncture therapy. It's kind of like a light therapy, like a light acupuncture therapy. Okay. Soft body work, sound meditation. So we've got different people who are kind of what you'd maybe call alternative practitioners who are coming in, and having the body as maybe the lens through which we can explore some of this stuff as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah,
I like what you said, because a lot of the mental stuff are being placed inside of our body, and it's going in a circle. So you see, like, we did the cryo just before we did the movement, and you see a lot of people when I explain to them why they should expose themselves for the cold. You see they tense up already. It's like an earlier experience of the cold is placed inside their body, so they're, before they even cold, they're expecting it with tensing up. So you also mentioned like experimenting with microdosing psilocybin. I feel like using that to remove some of those placed body issues like posture, the way how you enter a room, self-confidence, stuff like that. It's really obvious when you take psilocybin. It's like if you are a big group, you take it together, and you can see, if you're doing some movements in a circle, you can see right away who has some like issues with themselves, because it's really manifested in the way how they take space, put their chest out, how they do the movement exercises. So do you feel it's more beneficial to incorporate psilocybin as a microdosing when you do stuff like that?
It's just another tool. I mean, there's so many different tools that we can use, as I said, to develop more body awareness and body sensitivity. And for me, microdosing has been, a real revelation, and just in terms of understanding where a lot of those habits and a lot of those tensions and a lot of those sort of neurosis that we have in our bodies is actually held. Because as you said, the body holds on to a lot of that kind of stuff that gets in the way of our free expression. It's trauma, it's drama, it's unnecessary emotion, it's unnecessary fear. It's being, in a way, hypersensitized to the world around us, when we can actually just learn to let go a little bit more and actually be open to the experience, which is, obviously going to give us a greater awareness about our presence in life, and our presence with not only with ourselves but with others around us in social settings and in physical settings when it comes to training. So it's a tool that's very useful, I've found, in a very sub-perceptual dose. So what I mean by that is, a very very low dose that's non-psychedelic in a way. So in a way you're not really affected.
You're not sure if you're feeling.
You're not consciously affected by it, but in a way, it just allows a little bit of that sensitivity to be a little bit less attached to those kind of typical habits that hold you back. In for example, a training space. It's like you maybe immediately think about your bad knees, so you might be a little bit more limited with certain expression of certain movements, or maybe you're going to jump in the water or the cryo chamber, and you remember what cold feels like. So it maybe just allows a little bit more kind of fluidity in your ability to be able to be present with the opportunities and with the opportunities that present themselves to you in a more of a spontaneous setting, whether it's a social setting, whether it's in a concentration setting, like working in a project, or actually working on some sort of movement skill or technique, or group setting, just allowing a little bit more of that flow to take place. And I think it's a very interesting, understudied, underdeveloped tool that can be used in a physical capacity. Now we're hearing a lot about a lot of these tech people and these business types that are using microdosing for productivity.
Silicon Valley people.
Yeah, and that's interesting in its own right. But for me, the actual physicality, the way that we can develop more sensitivity to our joints, to our flexibility, to our mobility, the way that we can override our stretch reflex to get into deeper positions and just feel more sort of joy about the way that our bodies move, the potentials in our body. And not be overridden all the time by our monkey mind telling us, nah, you can't do that, or nah, that's too dangerous, or now you've had enough, or you know what I mean. So it's,
I know what you mean. I did a microdose and I went those new stairs at Ulriken, and I just, like, in the beginning it was a little bit heavy, and then I just started running and I got into flow state right away. And when I hit the top, I did some chin-ups and did some like acrobatics in those bars at the top. And I had my girlfriend with me, and we were running down the stairs again as fast as we could, and like everything was going in slow-mo, and I got into flow state right away, and it was like we were running so fast down, and if we had been falling, we had been really hurting ourselves. But the feeling you get, the way I could tap into things, it's much easier. Much easier. It's right away. It's almost instant if I know which path I will take. Of course, in a social setting you can struggle a bit more. It's not only you, and it's you have to confront your own insecurities. How do I sit? How do I talk? How do I look? And why does this guy look at me in this way? So it's a little bit harder, but after a while you sort of get to know yourself in a much better way. Yeah,
and I think again that's the great benefit of using substances such as psilocybin. They're certainly non-addictive. It's the opposite of addiction in a way that you use them for short periods of time, and then you actually learn the benefits. You learn about yourself in order to be able to take those benefits and that awareness into your day-to-day life. So you're actually learning the whole time. It's almost like a portal of understanding yourself in a deeper way, and you can take that kind of sensitivity and that appreciation, whether it's balance and awareness in your body, or whether it's more confidence of yourself in a social situation. So it becomes more of like a tool, like a training tool, like anything else that can be integrated into your life, and then you realize that you're not actually you don't actually need these as a crutch.
No,
they're actually just tools that can be so pivotal in actually developing new sensitivity and new awareness and a new appreciation of life in a way.
Yeah, it's for sure not addictive. People often use the argument, okay, if you say it's so nice and so good, so of course everything's addictive. And no, my experience of it is more like you have learned something, and afterwards you're a little bit like full. You have to process this, especially if you do a little bit more than a microdose. It's like you don't want to do it again the day after in the morning, unless you're on a retreat or doing something special with a special group, but you don't do it to go to work. So it's like I think it's untapped potential, and it's surprising. Sometimes people surprising me when I speak to people about it that haven't almost not heard about it, and other people that I haven't even imagined would have done it are opening up and telling me like, yeah, I use it in work settings now and then. I use it as a workout supplement. They use it as a way of finding themselves and like walking over mountains and reconnecting with themselves, the inner child, and be more goofy and let loose.
Yeah, definitely from that connectivity point of view, as far as a tool or a supplement goes. Like, you think of how much coffee is drunk in this country, and as a stimulant, and I how much, I often ask myself, how much sort of connectivity does that provide, or is that just a sort of a way to mask a lot of that sort of lack of sleep or that lack of awareness that we generally have during the mornings, especially. But with the psilocybin, it's more of like it's. I think Stan Groff he called psychedelics non-specific amplifiers of consciousness. So in a way, it doesn't specifically target one thing about your conscious awareness, but it just sort of amplifies your ability to be present and your ability to be aware. So if you have very strong intentions and you're on track with things in life, with your relationships or your work situation or your physical practice, if you're on track, then I think these things can just amplify that. Just like a lot of these things we've been doing today, with the floating and with the cryo chamber, with the infrared lights. These are ways to just amplify your path of increased awareness already. And if you're looking for ways of doing that, then things like breath work and meditation and microdosing are very useful for that. Whereas often you look at habits people have with, for example, alcohol or coffee or nicotine, and it's often sort of they're often ways of getting away from that amplification, because the noise is often people hear that noise and they want to dampen that noise, because that noise is kind of causing a bit of stress and it's not allowing them to be more effective. So we're just dampening them with those different substances that are commonly available, ironically enough.
Yeah, and it's like people are so judgmental when they drink more than once a week, and when they drink, they wake up the day after, they're hangover. And I try to tell them, like, you know what hangover is? Your brain is dehydrated. That's why it's in pain. It's like you drank too much. You do this more than once a week. Okay, this is not good for your health. Yeah, it's legal, but it's like, okay, everything that's legal is not good for you. Like everything that's not, everything that's what's it called?
Illegal is bad for you.
It's bad for you. So it's just like norms and things put down for people to have a pathway, but now we know better. We know much better. And I think the government did know better when they put their foot down and no consciousness.
I think there's no excuse now for people for lacking information. I think the information is out there, and then it just becomes more of like people's refusal to actually acknowledge information and learn about science and be curious themselves. There's no real excuse these days, and maybe before the internet there was a lot of ignorance around, and maybe people listened to authorities a lot more back then, because who knew, but now there's certainly no excuse. And when it comes to microdosing, there's a lot of very high level athletes, professional athletes, a lot of MMA fighters, a lot of footballers, a lot of professional skiers, and of course a lot of high level businessmen and execs, inventors, scientists, researchers, professors. It's very common, even though it's still reasonably underground, but it's actually, things are changing thanks to people like Ben Greenfield, Joe Rogan, these kind of people who are really... Tim Ferriss
really investing in it.
A major investor now in a couple of these universities, with the first psychedelic labs now in London and in Johns Hopkins. So I think it's time. I think the wheel has turned fully now. Perhaps not fully, but at least it's no longer sort of this realm of debating back and forth these silly arguments about this is no good and this is dangerous and people jumping out of windows. I think the time for this is kind of over now, and now I think the science is really coming in. It's coming to the fore. A lot of these studies and these tests are really producing incredible results when it comes to things like treatment-resistant depression, anorexia, smoking cessation, PTSD, all manner of things. They're just lining up to do these kind of studies and researches now, and I think it's really good that what I would call sensible people are actually coming out and talking about these things in a very responsible way, because it doesn't become the hippie thing again. Like the issue back in the 60s. It became more of like overridden. The actual issues were there and the research was being done, but it was the spokespeople were perhaps not the right people back then at that time. No. The climate perhaps wasn't ripe for it then, but I think the climate now is pretty ready for this.
I think most times when people, like you said, now is no excuse to don't find the information yourself. So I think it's more like when people identify with their belief system, or with their belief, it's like an attack on their personality. And if they, like, say you're a 50-year-old father and you've told your kids all life, like, that's bad, don't do that, and you got to hear that when you were like in the 20s, and you were like, oh, I will never do that, that's bad for you. And suddenly it's like, okay, the information is here, the world is still spinning around, but we have new information. It's like, no, because the ego, they don't want to go back on something they already put their foot down, and this is bad. And I think also it's mainly rooted in like those fears for those, like you losing their mind or something like that. If they only knew that they can actually find better parts of their mind and find more empathy and more love for other people than only themselves, because it's I only hope the it will go much faster, so people can really benefit from it. So it's not.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to this ego thing. You know, people are very locked in their identities, and culture kind of, you know, it really pushes people to have a strong identity and to confirm their sense of individuality and achievements, and, you know, achieving these goals and being someone of note. You know, so people get a little bit locked up in this idea that, you know, now I've achieved this and that, and I've come out with this stance on this particular subject, and this is my belief, and maybe it's less kind of religious orientation now, but it's still dogma and still ideology. Yeah. And that can be very damaging, just like it has been for a lot of this religious indoctrination that we've had in the last couple of 100 years. So I think perhaps now the time is, like we said, information is available now to understand what the mind is and what identity is, and how we can actually, what thoughts are, and how we can actually have different ideas about what reality is, and we can actually decide to be very open-minded about that and realize that who we are is not our thoughts, and who we are is not our ideology, and we don't have to have anyone else telling us how things are.
That's very good what you say, because I think most people identify with their thoughts, and I think they're thinking that that's them. I like to explain to people when they go into the float tank, and I tell them that, like, just remember your thoughts just popping up. You're the observer. And most people are like, what are you talking about? Yeah, you're the one that observe the thoughts, change the thoughts. If they're very bad, do something about it or change it. Take a deep breath, let it go, think about something happy. But people like get caught up in all those bad thoughts, stressful ones, hurtful ones, and it's like they identify with that. But it's more like you create your own reality. So if you only put in shit and you put aside the things you should do to feel better, it will like be a messy kitchen.
Well, I mean, if you just imagine if everyone could kind of come to that realization at a young age, you know, if that was taught at schools, if meditation, you know, was taught at schools, that we are not our thoughts, and we have the ability to be able to observe our thoughts, you know, as part of us, as an interesting part of us, but not who we are, then I think the world will be a lot different place, you know, because just getting attached to your thoughts and identifying with those thoughts as who you are, and then of course it becomes me against you, you know, my thought against your thought, my belief system against your belief system. Yeah. But just to be able to observe, because these are all unconscious, like thoughts, where do they come from? You know, how can you sit down and take a few breaths and actually see where a thought comes from? Like, where does a thought come from? Where does it go? You know, these are coming from deep inside us, our subconscious, and to be able to sit back and observe our thoughts and actually see that they are coming from somewhere. They're coming from these deep ingrained habits, and actually being able to see those patterns and making a choice, having a perspective on those patterns. We can actually change our perspective upon those patterns, and we can actually rewire the way that those patterns operate on us. And then suddenly you see that thoughts become something different. You know, they're still thoughts, but they become different thoughts, and we don't get overly attached to them. And I think to have that, like at least for me in my practice, you know, my more contemplative, reflective practice over recent years, it's been a huge breakthrough, you know, with the help of psychedelics, with the help of deep meditation. It's actually helped me have that position as an observer, and of seeing myself with these different thoughts and these different emotions, and then actually seeing that they are all trying to provide signals of who I am at a deeper level, my deeper psyche, my deeper unconscious, my subconscious, and they're providing contrasts, and they're providing mirrors for me to reflect upon. And and then the question becomes, do I want to just continue to repeat these patterns, you know, be an asshole or react this way, or close off in this circumstance, you know, with my girlfriend or my children or my ex-partners, or do I want to actually look at things from a different perspective and take up you know, a different path about becoming aware of who my true self is?
It's really good. Yeah, but it's like turn it around. Look at things from another perspective. I think, like you said there, it's too many people get caught up in all the bad things. And I remember from now, I'm turning 30 this month, and when I was like 22, 23, I was on a real like ego trip. My whole life was finding myself, meeting girls, like just living, being more of me. And I got into a lot of situation that wasn't that good for me or for my body or mind or consciousness or anything. And I was always telling myself and others that I was always unlucky. And when I first tried like psychedelics, I think I was, I don't know, 22, 23, around that shift, I got a real eye opener. I was like, I watched myself in the mirror and was like, what the fuck am I doing? But of course, nothing changes overnight, but it was a real eye opener. Some doors in my head was opened up, some light was turned on, and a thought process started to emerge. And I started to get much more interested in how I can change my consciousness, like how I can see on things in a different perspective and use my curiosity to be a better version of myself instead of just be a more egocentric version of myself. And of course, nobody's perfect, and it's a long road, and it's a continuous road, and who knows where we're going. But so it's like we talked a little bit about before we started the podcast. It's all about you create your own reality, always. It's like it's important for people to know. It's like what you expose yourself for is how you look at the world. If you fill up your Instagram with beauty pageants or makeup or just like cars and stuff and clothes and stuff like that, you will always want those things, but those things won't make you happy. And of course, you can also do it in a more extreme way. You can fill up your Instagram with only spiritual, LSD, psychedelic, and you forget that most people are maybe not there. So then you end up like a hippie or a freak that can't like translate this message to other normal people. So what I think is really nice to see is like a educated man as yourself, and you have the whole package with the body movement, and you put it in a perspective that people can understand it, and it's no like hippie flippy peace and love, you just jump around. It's like you put it in a organized way, and that's really good to see.
Yeah, thanks. I'm trying at least to try and make it more accessible for people, because I can often get a little bit lost in the woods when it comes to my kind of some of the more esoteric ways that I like to write about things and describe things, and it can become a little bit long in the tooth, I think, just because it interests me, but I'm thinking about the audience. But for me, like you said, it's not about trying to become some externalized version of the spiritual person or the woke, quote unquote woke person, because we are spiritual beings already. It's just about being more of who we are. and that includes, you know, all of our fuck ups and all of our mistakes in the past, and all of some of our weird habits and thoughts, and our imaginations, and the way we look and express ourselves. It's all part of the package, and it's all good stuff. But we just need to be confident that it's kind of, that the intention is to learn more about who we are as ourself from an internal perspective, and not always looking for that external image of who we are.
Yeah.
So trying to find some image about, you know, I am this ultra spiritual person, or I am this extremely alternative, because then it's that external gain. We're trying to look externally rather than looking in.
Yeah.
So you can actually, you know, look or do or be anyone, but have a very deep internal spiritual practice. You know, someone that is very reflective, someone that is deeply contemplating life. You know, that's, you don't have to have the clothes for that, or you don't have to have the job for that, or the nationality, or be part of the certain group for that. But a lot of people, they're chasing this awareness, they're chasing this kind of, again, this identity. But it's the ego. It's this surface level of conscious awareness that people are residing in, and people are attached to that, even if they think they're not. You know, they might have this ultra fancy yoga practice or meditation practice, but they're still caught in this surface level of their consciousness.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, Carl Jung, he talked about the consciousness having these different layers of thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition. And then there's this fifth element, there's this transcendent element of our consciousness, this element of mystery, this awareness that we dream, the dream state, this space of imagination, when we get this kind of energy in our body that we don't quite know what it is. We don't quite know how to handle it. It's not really a part of our identity, or we can't really talk about it, but it's something there that really drives us to actually know more about ourselves. And that's not something that we can go looking outside for. We don't have to go and chase that, but we can actually just sit. We can just sit. We can be out in nature, sit alone, and just ask ourselves the question, who am I? Yeah. Who am I? And not expect anything, and not be impatient, but just keep asking yourselves, who am I, and what is deep within me?
Yeah, and I also think it's important to say that when you do that, and you have been turned on this external chase your entire life, it takes a while to calm down the noise. So you can't just go out in the woods and say, who am I, a couple of times, and you will find it out. You have to actually practice it. It's like practice meditation. I think most people, they sit down, okay, I've heard about this fad, practice meditation, okay, let's sit down, let's try it, and they give up right away, because it's like so much more out there that's very tempting when you haven't experienced what's inside, your own potential inside. And I think it's really, for me, I have problems sometimes explaining it, and it's because it sounds really, sometimes when I try to explain it to people, it sounds like I put myself on a high horse, like I've increased enlightenment or something like that. But what I'm actually trying to say is, like, you can actually just empty your mind, and you will fill the cup inside of you, the cup that always half full, that you want a little bit extra. And I think it's really nice to see that I've been speaking to a lot of successful people, and they have everything, the cars, the boats, the house, everything, and they still chase for something. And I had one guy in here, he was a really special guy. He had been growing up with everything. His mother and father, filthy rich. He has been giving everything, and now he's working and doing everything very good. And I showed him the flotation tank, and I explained a little bit about it. And he said, "Why haven't I seen this before?" I said, "I don't know. Yeah, it's like you create your own reality." So he tried it. He came out. He was in bliss. He was really like amped up. Really, what the fuck? Why did I miss this? And he explained to me that he's meditating morning and evening every day for the last 5 years. And I asked him, like, can I ask you why? And he said, yeah, because I'm rich, and I wasn't happy. I had it all, and I wasn't happy. So I spoke with other people in similar situations, and they told me to meditate. Empty my mind and you will find inner peace. So he does it now, every day. And he said, yeah, the flotation tanks is like meditation on steroids. It's like, it works more efficient and easier, and also it's good for your body. So he's buying one tank at home.
Oh, nice. Yeah, lucky him. Yeah, I would love to have one at home. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely right. A lot of people, they're so attached to this material reality, and the search and the allure of this material reality is really the heart of any kind of addiction. And you know what addiction is really a sort of a lack of awareness of the source of love and the self-love that we have within ourselves. And if we're not at peace with that in any circumstance in our lives, then we're always going to be chasing some sort of stimulant to try and dampen that longing that we have. I think as humans, we all have that need. You know, right from birth, we have that disconnect from birth. When we're born, we're really disconnected from that womb, that Mother Earth. Yeah. And then life is about, you know, exploring life and having fun and trying to work out our identity but there's always that longing to have that reconnection. And that reconnection is it always comes back to the heart, you know. And you can be full of money, or you can have all the material possessions in the world and have all the success. But again, if you don't have that real strong connection and peace within the heart, then I think you're going to be always looking and searching, and that can cause a lot of strife and distress. And, you know, I work with a lot of people as well who are, you know, on the surface of things, extremely successful and happy and well off in all aspects of their life, but they don't have that inner peace and inner harmony within their hearts. And that's something that I'm really honestly sad about as a human, because I realize that everyone has that potential and capacity within them just to reflect upon themselves and look in the mirror and see the beauty in themselves, regardless of their background and what other people are saying about them, what their noise in their own mind is saying about, just to have that ability to be able to look at yourself and see that inner beauty. And that's such a powerful thing to be able to achieve.
It's hard in the beginning.
Very hard.
It's really hard, especially if you come from a background where it's
hasn't been much love.
Yeah, especially that. And if you haven't grown up in a family where they usually take the light and turn it inwards, because it's and at school as well. You go to school. I remember junior high. I don't know what's it called in English, but the ungdomsskola. Yeah, where you go in the teenage years. And I remember they were like the director on the school were like, you're a hyperactive guy. You should use your hands and you should build some houses. And he was really like, do that. You will be insured a job, so you can make money and buy the stuff you want. Always, that was always the thing. And when you went to like the younger school, the teacher said, do a good work, get good grades, go to the next school, get good grades, get the job you want so you can get the money so you can buy the things you want. I think it's very like printed into our minds, instead of saying, get the money to have security so you can at least explore the good side of yourself. But remember to love yourself on the way, so you don't always chasing the external things. And nowadays with podcasts, you have like Netflix, you have headphones, you have always something. And I'm guilty of it myself. When I go to sleep sometimes, I put a podcast in my ear. I put like the timer on, so it will turn off after 30 minutes or 15 minutes. And I fall asleep with noise. It's like I try to do it less often, but I've been doing that for years. So now it's like the last year, it's like once a week, twice a week. I like to read a book instead, because I feel much better the day after. But I don't think people are consciously thinking about it. They're just waking up in the morning and feeling like shit, and they need their coffee to get by the day, and they're like anxious in the beginning of the morning. They're grumpy. It's like takes half the day to get started. And I think it's all the noise.
I think there's definitely overstimulation in today's Western society, and I think that's it's not good, especially for young people. Yeah. You know, young people growing up with the social media and just this constant bombardment of stimulation about not only who you should be or what you should look like or who you should hang out with, but what you should be doing next. You know, it's just that idea of, okay, now I've got, you know, a free period in between classes, so I'm going to listen to a podcast, or I'm going to catch up on my email or something. It's like always something to be done. Yeah. So it's, for me, I often say to people, you know, meditation, it's not really something that you should try and think of as just another thing that you should fit in throughout your day. It's a space of awareness about observing yourself and observing that rat race going on in your mind, always looking for something to do. Yeah. And I try and encourage people to have this kind of a white space. I like to sort of think of it as like a white space where you're not actually doing anything, or you don't actually have to do anything. You know, it could be out going for a walk, or it could be sitting down after dinner and you're not doing anything. You're not. This is not a breathing exercise. This is not a meditation moment. This is not. You're just doing literally nothing. And often you'll find, well, maybe it lasts 5 minutes, and then it's like, oh, now I have to do something, or now I have to get ready for the, But just to turn down the volume a little bit and get that into your practice, that becomes a meditation in itself, and then meditation becomes awareness, and then awareness becomes concentrating on whatever you're doing throughout the day. So then suddenly your day becomes this meditative space, and it doesn't have to become this regimented, now I have to do this, now I have to get my breathing in, now I have to get my exercise in, my meditation in. It just becomes a space of just interesting curiosity, really. And then from there, then you can see yourself and you see your habits. It's like, well, why do I need to be going for that snack? Yeah. Or why do I need to be checking my phone right now? It's like you see that little monkey.
Yeah, sometimes it's really embarrassing. Actually, I look at myself and some bad habits I have, and of course I don't tell them to others. So, but for myself, it's like, what the fuck am I doing? It's just small things you can change, like but you're so wrapped up in all the external stuff all the time, and I see it. This now we've been having this place, FlowState, for a little over a year, and it's been a tremendous change for my way of thinking about stuff. And of course, I'm really blessed. I can take the flotation tank whenever I want, and I don't do it as often as I would like to do because I have other things to do. So you can't get wrapped up in, it's like it's easy to find a new thing that you really like and do that all the time. Open up a little bit and turn the light around, or look yourself in the mirror and try to change those small things, and maybe have those quiet moments and look at your behavior and how you act with others, and try. Don't get so wrapped up in being a finished product.
We're never going to be that anyway, no. So that's just a lost cause, We're always going to have our unique characteristics, and that's the beautiful thing about humans, is we're all different, we're all unique, we all have these quirky parts of our nature and our character. That's what makes us characters, and that's what makes us attracted to other people, and people attracted to us, is that we have those peculiar characteristics about us. And that's for me, that's a goal in life, is not to fit into that box, like society tells us to fit in, and fit in and do this, do that, and tell us what to do and tell us which line to follow. Is to be yourself, but to be on a daily basis, to be more of yourself.
Authentic.
And be more true to yourself. Authenticity, just ask yourself a question, look in the mirror, write down something that you're grateful for, or something you're interested in, or just spend a little moment each day to kind of try and improve your own self-awareness and self-worth. And I think we can only work on ourselves. These people who are going around trying to tell other people what to do. It's like, fuck that. It's like who are we to do that? How sort of presumptuous are you to go around telling other people what to do? It's like take a look at yourself. And I think people that I admire and people that I respect, my mentors and my close network of friends, they're all people who are very humble in themselves because they're constantly doing the work and they're constantly checking in with themselves, with their behaviors, with their attitudes on a daily basis. And they're realizing that, life is just this amazing game to just learn about yourself, and sometimes we fuck up, and to be honest about that and to be open about that and not to try and hide that and think that we are this polished jewel, like to be humble and just to relax a little bit more. And I think having that attitude, at least it's helped me a lot through a lot of shitty times, and it's actually helped me gain a lot more peace and relaxation, I think, in life. And
the shitty times will come. So it's
of course.
It's like Jordan Peterson are saying. It's like life is mostly hard. You just need to handle it, like learn how to handle the times or something like that. I don't remember exactly. But
and I think it's I think it's useful as well to kind of to follow some of these people who are really interested in kind of creating a meaning through practical experience of life. People like Rogan, people like Jordan Peterson, some of these figures that are really just working through this mystery of life, because life is this mystery, and it's like, I think, like we're born and then suddenly we're in this incarnation. It's like, how weird is it? Sometimes I just think about how like life is this psychedelic state all the time. It's like it's light, and then people are running around doing stuff, and then they're going back and it's quiet, it's dark. It's like, we have all these thoughts.
Michael Pollan, he said something about that. He said something about like from the age of 0 to 4, you're most likely tripping all the time because you have no limitations for the consciousness. Like you look at things in a way that you don't have any words to describe it. You don't have any emotions and things behind it. So everything is just trippy. But like you said, sometimes I feel like that in just a normal setting. If you just sit down, actually, like on B-Bomb or something like that,
and observe. I mean, because we fill ourselves up as we develop identities past 7 or 8 years old. We develop concepts and we develop categories of meaning related to certain behaviors and certain thoughts. And then, the more we do that, then when we become adults, it's like, well, we have to be responsible, But of course, to be a child, to have that instincts, of course we need to mature and get past that childhood stage, and we need to become, from boyhood to manhood, of course we need to become responsible, but we don't want to lose touch of what that sort of innocence of being a child is. It's looking at the world with these big eyes, like every day is some new possibility to learn something, to do something, to smile at something, to say hello to someone is like, this a miracle in itself.
Go barefoot.
Go barefoot, or talk to some strangers, or like do something different with your body, or it's like there's unlimited potential in every day, and every day provides those little moments, and every day is really what life is about. It's not about these big moments that now we're going to go to this big event, or when I save up enough I'm going to buy this house, or now I'm going to achieve this skill with my body in the gym, or lift this amount of weight. These are these moments, but but this is not what life is about. Life is these little moments in between, and if we can have a little bit of kind of humor about it as well, and not take things so ultra seriously, then I think that can maybe ease our path in life a little bit easier as well.
I think also it's good for people to sometimes it can be hard to imagine, like, how if you're in a shitty situation, it can be hard to imagine a good situation. If you feel depressed and you watch outside the window and it's sunny, it's like, fuck, it's sunny, couldn't it rain so I can stay inside and feel sorry for myself? You're always twisting it in a bad way. So I think I like to say to myself, sometimes I just wake up and feel fucking amazing, and sometimes I wake up and feel stressed. So most of the times I can put my finger on what it is, but other times it's a collaboration of many things. It's just waiting to pop up.
Mm.
And imagine if you can feel fucking amazing more, not every day, but more, by being like pushing aside or confronting your fears and your shame and your way of taking yourself too serious, always twisting it around a little bit. So it's I saw the Alex Honnold free solo. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
The climb. I saw they did a measurement of his head, his amygdala, the fear center.
Yeah.
And
doesn't exist.
Yeah. You heard the last. You heard the last one with Joe Rogan.
I think I watched that. Yes.
Yeah, he had one like neuroscientist or something like that. Yeah.
Scanning his brain. Yeah.
Yeah. He spoke. Yeah, but on the Alex Honnold, they were like scanning for the amygdala and see if there were any activity, and it was no at all. So after that, I got a thought about, okay, I should once a week I should confront myself with something that I'm feeling fearful about. So I don't get like anxious and fearful in situations that should be calm and nice. So it's because the feeling I hate, and I think most people hate to be afraid. Be afraid of yourself or other things or situations, and the fear of the anxiety and the anxiety of the anxiety. It's like it's a bad circle. So, and also what you're doing with the body movements, going out in the woods, I think that helps a lot to remove those things just naturally. We are boxing ourselves in now.
Yeah, and I think for me, I often think about these neurochemicals that are released with fear and anxiety, and it's often these neurochemicals are not really interested in which certain part of the day or what event is actually happening. They're going to be released, and they're going to be pumping out and floating around and flooding our cortex no matter what. So if we can actually teach ourselves and teach our physiology and our brains what real fear is and what anxiety and stress is, and actually use that for when it's needed, and actually dampen it down, then a lot of these chemicals are actually going to be, the mediation and the flow of these chemicals is going to be regulated to an extent as well.
Be more in tune.
Because a lot of people, they have this kind of a surface level of anxiety and stress and fear all the time.
Yeah.
And that means that this whole flow of neurochemicals is completely out of whack. So if we can actually, immerse ourselves in the cold, for example, and train ourselves, do different movements outside that we're not used to, or climb trees, or put ourselves in these situations where we can actually be safe and be responsible, but actually know that we're not going to die. We're not going to die from going in the water. We can train ourselves, and then in a way we can actually learn to develop a more connection with our physiology as well, and that can actually reduce our ability to have anxiety and stress throughout the day.
Yeah, put some controlled stress on yourself to remove the chronic.
Yeah, but it has to be voluntary as well,
of
of course, Jordan Peterson is he's very big on this as well, that you need to, if you have trauma, if you have anxiety, if you have stress, if there's issues from the past, then you have to really gradually introduce them back in a very measured way to be able to actually see them for what they are, and then to be able to override them from that, and again change the narrative. What story am I telling myself when I'm scared? I'm going to jump in the water and I'm so stressed and I'm already shivering. Like, what is that story? Where is that coming from? It's not true. It hasn't happened yet. So you can rewire yourself in so many different ways, and it's all in the mind. The power of the mind is just so incredible. We don't even know the surface level of what power we have in the mind, But if we can actually continue to tap into that and play around with that and have fun with it, and who knows what the potential of the mind is.
Yeah, it's. When did we have to go? It's.
Okay, we can go a little bit more.
Yeah. It's going a little bit back to the psychedelic aspect of what you just said about what the fuck, I'm losing the thread. What's the last thing you said?
We're talking about fear, and we're talking about the way that we can modulate our physiology.
Yeah, because if you think about jumping in the ocean and it's freezing cold outside, you'll tense up because you're calculating all the potential risks and your former experience of the cold, so you put that on your body. But you can actually think about a warm summer day when you were out swimming and it was delightful. So where I think psychedelics is really good is in just that setting. You can tell yourself, if you're unconfident, you can stand in front of the mirror and you can say, I'm confident, and you can smile to yourself, and immediately you'll feel a better response. You can of course do that without, but it requires much more practice. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to see how psychologists can work with people's anxiety and unrealistic approach to fears. Like most people in Norway are probably afraid of spiders, but we have no poisonous spiders. We just seen the movies from when we were little, and it's maybe something way back in our genetics, but we should learn kids at school to manage those fears. Like sit down and like, okay, this is what happens. You see a spider, you get afraid. Okay, that's, yeah, you're aware the spider is over there. But you also know that they are not dangerous and you can stomp on it if you want. So don't scream and run and make a big mess out of it. It's like a bad circle, because if you have kids and you're afraid of a spider or a dog or a cat or whatever the fuck, you put that fear on your kid. And it's an unfair thing to do. But of course you don't do it on purpose. But I observe those things all the time now that I have a baby myself. So it's like I'm really conscious about my behavior and my choice and my way of doing things and talking to people. I don't want to be that like father who been putting trauma on my kid because I have unresolved issues with myself. So I think we can all make ourselves a big we can make ourselves a favor by changing ourselves and practice with to change those bad things with ourselves before we get kids. So you are more so we can stop that bad cycle of just letting bad shit drip down on your kids all the time, because you see it all the time.
Oh, the children, they're just so porous, they just absorb everything, and of course they absorb from those closest to them. And of course the parents in most circumstances are the closest contact point to children, so it just comes back to being aware and being very conscious of your approach to the world, and if having this over-cautious approach, I think it can go too far in a way. This overprotective nature. I mean, one extreme where there's actually no love and no nurture, that's the opposite extreme. But on the other hand, is not giving children this ability to be able to explore and examine their own place in life by themselves. There's this Russian psychologist named Vygotsky, and he talks about the zone of proximal development, and it's this zone about allowing children to discover for themselves, and also teaching children about what the next stage in their development is, and actually having this little piece in the middle where children actually learn by doing. Instead of actually telling the children how things are or what's going to happen, you let them try and work it out themselves, but then you just give them a little bit of encouragement when it's needed. So if their development is not quite there yet, then you'll just give them a little bit, rather than actually just smothering them. And either telling them what the solution is, what's going to happen, what's good or what's bad, or smothering them, saying that no, that's bad, don't do that, that's dangerous. So then of course you see kids growing up, and you observe that. Being a parent, myself, I observe that all the time. Kids who they're just scared. And it's not good when you see kids that are scared, because kids, the innate nature is to explore and to discover, and and experience life. And it's going to come back later on in life if they have that upbringing. It's going to come back, and it's going to, there's going to be resentment towards their parents in some situations, and there's going to be this whole developmental sort of reassessment as adult, which is a really tough thing to go through when you're an adult, and you're actually having to try and relearn this exploration and this joy of life because you've been smothered and maybe even brainwashed as a child through different social conditioning.
Yeah, you sort of get brainwashed because you're like a sponge. You just pick up things, and you watch your parents like the main goal in life. It's like, oh, they are adults, so I'm going to that place. At least when you're very little. But I think also when parents are not open and honest about the potential risk and what's the actual risk here, and like you said, like, let them try, expose them to stuff that is not potentially deadly, but a little bit painful, so they can learn.
Yeah, maybe do some ice bathing. It's not. I mean, man, kids in Norway, they have it really good here. It's like it's such a peaceful place. It's safe. There's no danger. There's no spiders, like you said, snakes or crocodiles. It's like growing up in Australia in the outback is another story. Or other parts of the world. But yeah, I think here in Norway, kids have got there's a lot going for kids here, and it's just it's amazing to see the potential that kids have here to really develop into amazing adults, and I think people here in general are switched on here in Norway, and and the kids here are really switched on kids, the teenage kids here, but definitely the social media thing is a little bit worrying. But I guess that's everywhere. I guess that's not just here.
Yeah, and I'm eager to see how long that transition phase will last, because I think with every action is a reaction.
There will be, yeah.
Yeah, so now it's like we just like dipping our toes in the technology world, and it's really amping up. And over to the parents again, don't give your kids an iPad every time it yells out, do something else, because it's not that fun. It's just like very time consuming when you don't have anything else to do. Yeah,
it's as a sort of a distraction thing. And I think the interesting thing is going to see this next generation when they start having kids, the generation that's grown up with this stuff. Yeah. And when they start having kids, maybe in the next decade, is to see how things are handled then. Because, these young parents now, if that's all they know, and they're born with this smartphone stuck to their hands, then what's going to happen to their kids? But anyway, who knows what's going to happen in 10 years' time? Maybe we'll have these chips, these phones implanted in microchips in our brains. Who knows? But I always think, as a parent myself, I always think, you do your best, you do the best job you can, and then once the kids leave school or get to a sort of responsible age, then it's really up to them to really sort of outlive or to transcend their parents in a way. And I've kind of come to peace myself with that with my kids, who are almost they're late teens now, and I've kind of come to peace with doing my best that I've done for them, and now it's their turn to be themselves and to do what they want to do, and to sort of overcome me and my parenting role and become more of me or better than me, and by being more of themselves, and that's I think that's a beautiful thing as a parent, that you
evolution.
Well, it is. You do your best and you try and provide that nurture and of course that unlimited love. That never ends. Yeah. But then you set them free and you try and find peace with that, no matter how hard it feels, at times.
I can imagine.
But it's a good ride. I mean, I tell you, being a parent, and you've got those years ahead of you, and it's not only a big responsibility, but everything in life is a responsibility, And it's not just about the practical things, about providing them a nice home and making sure they're safe, but it's about, again, by having that continual path of doing the work yourself as a man and as a father, because that's a big role, not just the practical side of being a good husband or being a good dad, but actually developing yourself and continuing to do the work on yourself, and to be able to look back and 18 years and say, you know what, from day one, I was working on myself, you know, and I was looking at my faults, and I was looking in the mirror every day and, you know, seeing that it wasn't about perfection. It was just about turning up every day, showing up every day, you know, looking in the mirror.
Yeah, everybody can have a kid, but not everybody can be a good parent. It takes work. We need to do that.
It takes work, you know, and we can't just accept that we've got money and we've got a nice house and they can go to school. We can't just be satisfied with that. I think we've got to keep working, you know, and keep being that role model, because in the end we are, at least for the first few years, we are the greatest role model for the kids, you know. Maybe when they hit teenager years, maybe then we become a little bit a little bit boring, a little bit long in the tooth, and not so exciting and interesting to be around. But at least those formative years, then that's the most I think they're the crucial years, you know. Those first 3 or 4 years, they're really, really essential. And
looking forward to it.
It's a fun time.
I wanted to dip just in to diet before we wrap it up. How's your look on diet? Food?
Just a small subject to finish with,
yeah, but just like a short. We can be talking forever. So
diet, it's you know, I've always been very, very interested in nutrition, and both my parents were very, very into it as well. So I sort of grew up with a lot of kind of I would say a lot of awareness around food. So I didn't have that typical upbringing with a lot of kids that grew up in my area, where they were just sort of fed very traditional kind of stodgy, starchy, carby, sugary kind of food. My parents were very sort of into the whole organic thing, and they were old hippies, you know. So I was used to that growing up. So so the one common thread throughout my life has been actually understanding what nutritious food is and learning to appreciate nutritious food. But then cycling through different phases as far as my training especially is concerned, about the way that I cycle my foods in terms of my macronutrients, especially the volume of food that I've been eating, and then introducing a lot more fasting in recent years as well. But in general, my main commonality has been to eat as healthy as I can, or what I understand to be healthy food, and to try and eliminate a lot of processed foods, or avoid a lot of processed foods, plant oils, sugars. And that's been throughout my life. I've gone periods where I've gone more plant-based, just as an experiment, just to see how that works with my training, with my sleep, with my hormones, those sorts of things, with my focus, my cognitive.
How do you feel when you do that? Because I'm having now a doctor over here in 2 weeks, Dr. Venus. He's a vegan doctor, so he's coming here to have a talk at the movie premiere in the cinema. So I'm going to talk to him about the vegan lifestyle, and he's all about that you can be a active, strong person and still be vegan.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the whole idea of of labeling a diet is kind of a misnomer, or it's kind of a slightly dangerous path to go down if you think that one type of eating can be labeled a certain diet and that can be applied to certain groups of people. I think that's a very kind of a risky way of approaching your diet. I think it has to be done on a very individual basis, and it has to be done on an experiential basis, meaning you need to experience certain ways of eating and understand on a daily basis how that's affecting, you know, your rest, your well-being, your as I said, your sleep, your hormones, your energy, your recovery from training, your concentration levels. And if things are out, then it's usually a sign that your diet is a little bit out as well. So for me, it doesn't, the whole argument about, people should be eating vegetarian, people should be doing the carnivore diet, you know, for me, it's not about either or one is better than another. Like it's more about trying to optimize the way that your own energy system and your own metabolism is actually working in conjunction with certain foodstuffs. So people are going to be reacting and responding to plants in really good ways or really poor ways, just as they are to meat products in really good ways or really poor ways, or starches or sugars. So for me, it's about experimenting and just seeing what feels really good. And if you're looking good, if your skin is good, if you're sleeping well, if your sexual function, your libido is good, your energy levels are good, your concentration is good, then that's
Don't change anything.
Well, just then you can tweak things out of interest, but don't be going and looking at these magazines and reading these stupid scare reports that meat is going to kill us all and give us all cancer, that a plant-based diet is going to make us all weak and provide us with no amino acids and essential nutrients. It's like if you Google, I did this as an experiment, is vegan diet healthy or is carnivore diet healthy? If you Google exactly the same thing and switch out meats with vegetable, then you'll get completely the same answers, scaring the shit out of people. So you look for what you're searching for. So these people who are ultra vegan, or these Jordan Peterson and his daughter who are ultra carnivores, take that with a little grain of salt and say that, okay, if you have extreme autoimmune disorders, and then cutting out all these plants that have all these lectins and these inflammatory molecules in them, then that's going to work for you. Then great, that's great. But that doesn't mean for the next person that's going to work, And the same with going completely plant-based, like people like Rich Roll, for example, these ultra triathlon, these ultra Ironman guys, like, vegan and you can be strong and fast. Great.
Rick Roll, that was the...
Rick Roll, he's this triathlon guy.
The guy from the band as well?
No, I think it's a different guy.
Okay,
he's this tall guy and lives in the States. So I'm very... The more that I learn about nutrition, the more open-minded I become about nutrition. I'm more interested in the way that it affects my body, and I'm more getting away from this idea that there's one diet that is suited for the human race. And the whole Paleolithic thing and the whole paleo diet, the whole high fat, low carb, or pure plant, or that we get all that we need from plant, or we get all that we need from meat. It's all just hype, and it just requires, again, a little bit of awareness. There's information is there. Dig in, do your research, but then experiment on yourself, and fast a little bit. Go without food and see what happens, and then see what your cravings are. See why you're craving food. See what your family history is. Do this 23andMe and find out what your genetic pattern says.
I believe a lot about the genetics, because I think if I was born and raised in Bergen, Norway, and Norwegian people have been eating fish for a long time, and like game meat and fried
potatoes.
So potato is not like my enemy. It's like, I like potatoes, and it's a good source of energy when I'm working out. It makes a lot of pressure in my muscles, so it's like, I think your genetics over time adapts to what you're eating. So
for sure, and you can become hypersensitized to certain types of foods, but again, the mind coming in and making up all these assumptions about what is right or wrong for me, and then certainly, proselytizing this and telling other people what they should be doing. This is just so ridiculous, So I'm always experimenting with my diet, with my food timings, and I'm always playing around with my training times to see when certain foods suit me when I'm training, before and after, or training on a fasted diet. And actually now I'm going into more of this kind of nervous system dietary approach, where I'm thinking more about loading up on actually sugars like maple syrup and honey first thing in the morning, and then maybe going higher protein, higher fat, lower carb just for a period, and maybe cutting plants for a while to see how that functions as well. But I feel pretty good in my body, and I've always eaten pretty well, and I've always eaten very intuitively. But to learn to eat intuitively takes a lot of practice, because a lot of people, they want the recipe. They want to be told what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat, what ratios to eat. But maybe that's good for starters to sort of get you on track, especially if you have like metabolic problems, or if you have autoimmune gut issues. Then maybe it's good to be a little bit sort of counting things and tracking things. I think that's always a good approach to start. But then always be curious about learning about how these foods affect you, and then from there, then we can kind of again, through this witness perspective, we can tap into this emotional side of eating as well. Like, why do we eat? You know, what do we crave? You know,
It's a whole different.
it could be the sugar thing, or you know what I mean. And then of course there's the enjoyment of eating. You know, do you love to eat? Do you love to cook? Do you love to source food? You know, and if you kind of like work on that, all those different factors, then you come to this stage where you just appreciate food for what it is. You know, it's energy, and we need energy. And if we can get it locally, and there's some old lady from a farm providing it for us, locally sourced, you know, freshly made, organic, then great. That's probably going to be better than some shitty package coming from on a truck from Southern Europe.
Yeah, one of the best meals I've ever tasted was in Crete in Greece, on an island high up in the mountains. Was just like was an old lady sitting on a bench, and she had like 2 tables, 2 chairs outside, and some goats in the backyard, and I was like, what the fuck, is this a restaurant? And I just, she said, come in, I will give you food. Like, okay, we sat down, and it was like goat meat in a stew. It was fucking delicious. And she said, yeah, the goats are going around in the mountain here, and she makes everything from scratch. She has her own herbs, everything. It was really nice.
Yeah, I mean, local food, like, you know, when you're traveling, like eating locally and fresh, it's nothing better than that, you know. It's all energy, and it's all awareness of that energy, and to see ourselves as a species amongst many species, and have respect for where we're getting our food and how we're sourcing our food, and having an understanding about directly where it's coming from. Then I think that's gonna take care of that sort of that morality side of things as well. That we can, if we're taking care of our own energy and being our best self, you know, and not being zealots about trying to tell people how they should eat or following some sort of diet because it's, you know, we think it's trendy, then I think we're doing ourselves a disservice, because we're not actually looking about what our energy needs are from a deeper perspective, you know, and that can relate to all sorts of different, you know, emotional and psychological and physical aspects of our health too.
Yeah, start by doing conscious choice. Like, don't just go into to fill the void. Go in to fill your energy level up, and But I think actually we need to wrap it up.
All right, man.
Yeah, this was really interesting, and
thanks for having me, man. I appreciate. Thanks for showing me around your beautiful FlowState studio, and I really appreciate it. And it's definitely recommend anyone interested in these different kind of therapies to dropping down and trying them out.
Thank you. And where can people find you and follow you? And you also told me you started a podcast.
The podcast is going to be releasing soon. Yeah, the Primal Movers podcast. Yeah, so it's going to be science, physicality, and philosophy. So there's going to and some psychedelic stuff thrown in there. So yeah, and it's going to be out soon. I'm just going to sort out a few technical things, and but yeah, most of my stuff is, if you just look at Primal Movers, then you'll be able to see most of the social medias. We'll have that. Instagram is where most of the updated stuff is. And so yeah, if you want to connect or come to one of my retreats around the world, or even here in Norway, then connect with me there.
Yeah, you have one in Lygra. No.
Yeah, coming up in November. So if this drops and it's November is still in the future, then you're welcome to come out.
Thank you very much.
Sweet, no problem.
Thank you.